So, yesterday we were talking about the Great Awakening. So, does anybody remember, or can you kind of give me just a brief summary of what the Great Awakening was? Already forgot? Brady, what you got?
It was a time period where people come to realize that they need to come back to their religion.
That's a pretty good description. It is. You see an upsurge in religious attendance, church attendance. Okay, more and more people begin to realize that they are missing something in their lives, and because over time, from the 1600s, the first colonists in America, up until the Great Awakening starts in the 1720s and it surges in the 30s and 40s, that people had fallen away from the church, from whatever church, any church, and now they're going to begin to have a revivalism, okay? Revivalism. I don't know if you guys go to church, and it doesn't matter if you do or don't, but you may be familiar with a revival. You may have at least heard of one of these, okay? All right, so it really begins in America, like the age of revivalism begins in the 1720s and 30s and 40s right here in the United States of America, okay? So you had, obviously there were a lot of different religions that were going on with some semblance of religious freedom in the colonies, but predominantly you had two major church organizations. One that was predominantly located in New England, which was which church group? Yeah, the Puritans or the Congregationalist Church. Those would be like the forefathers to today's Presbyterians, Episcopalians. All right, and then you also had the Anglicans. Okay, and that was the majority of your English settlers in the New World, with the exception of the Catholics who were fleeing persecution. Okay, who did face significant discrimination. So, you begin to see some challenges to the old way of doing things in the Puritan church. Remember, who were the Puritans? Who were the first Puritans to come here? They did? Why were they called Puritans? They wanted to purify the Church of England. So they were like super Anglicans. And many of them were so radical that they didn't only want to purify the Church of England, they wanted to completely separate from it and do their own thing. And that was the Pilgrims. Okay? And that's how the Puritan church came about and the Congregationalist church came about in New England. So the stage was set for this rousing age of revivalism known as the Great Awakening, which exploded throughout the 1730s and 40s and swept through the colonies, spread very quickly like wildfire. And the Great Awakening began in Massachusetts by a very intelligent, intellectual pastor named Jonathan Edwards. Perhaps the deepest theological mind in all of America. What does that mean to be a theological mind? What is theology? Yeah, study of really like God, study of God and religion. And Pastor Edwards proclaimed with a very much burning righteousness that it was not right to believe in, he wanted to bring a new spin on an old way of doing things. And he proclaimed with burning righteousness that it was wrong to believe in salvation through good works. And he believed that you had to have complete dependence on God's grace. So he did not believe in the idea of earning salvation or even just accepting it, being kind and honoring each other. And he was reaffirming Martin Luther's belief in faith alone. What is that in Latin? Faith alone? You remember? Faith alone.
It's like
Sola fide. Sola fide. Faith alone. So all you needed was God's grace. And how did you do that? Just believe. Okay? That is an American Protestant idea. All right? So many other religions they don't do that, but Jonathan Edwards brings that, and when he brings it with a great amount of passion, where he warns the people who are listening to him about in very vivid, graphic detail about the horrific nature of hell. All right? And he puts literally fear in people, painting very detailed descriptions in their mind of what the eternal torments of damned people and what would be waiting for you if you do not repent and accept. Okay? Repent and accept his teachings. And his most famous sermon, what was it called? Sinners in the hands of an angry God. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. So that was the title of one of his most famous sermons. But his preaching style was popular. It was entertaining. It made people have an emotional reaction. And another man took Jonathan Edwards' preaching style and he copied it, and he learned it, and he tweaked it a little bit to make it his own. And his name is George Whitefield. George Whitefield. And he took Jonathan Edwards' style and he put his own touch and own spin on it. And he does his own thing to revolutionize spiritual life in America and add to this great awakening. He adds to it. So Jonathan Edwards got the ball rolling, but George Whitefield takes it over the goal line, to give you a sports analogy, okay? So before he was a pastor and public speaker, he was a bartender. That was his job. He worked at an ale house. He was a bartender. And the thing about George Whitefield, which was so remarkable, was his speaking ability. He was an orator of very rare gifts. He had a magnificent, booming voice that could carry with great volume over thousands of people. Thousands of people could hear him. And they were enthralled, totally engaged by every word that came out of his mouth. So, he triumphantly toured most of the colonies, trumpeting his message of human helplessness. And humans are, you're totally helpless. You can't do anything on your own. You can't achieve salvation on your own. It doesn't matter what you do. And so the only answer would be, have faith. And then you're good. Okay? Have faith. Because of, kind of a helpless divine omnipotence. Meaning God is so big and so powerful and so omnipotent, meaning he's everywhere, knows everything at all times, that it doesn't really matter what you pathetic little human, all you need to do is believe. Okay? So this is kind of a stark contrast to the way things had been done, since Christianity began. But that's kind of what Protestantism is all about, protesting against the way things were. Okay? So Whitefield soon inspires other imitators. Other people see him and man, I want to do that. Okay? So his style of preaching gets kind of passed along. And you begin to see two types of Puritan and Anglican pastors emerging. All right? One that likes the old way of doing things, and one that likes the new way of doing things. The emotional, you put emotional attachment to the words you're speaking. That would be, they were called New Lights. The old way of doing things, those old, think about the Quaker Oats man putting the hat on, buttoned up nice and tight, black clothing, not very, old school. That's the old lights, okay? So, a lot of the old lights were deeply skeptical of what they considered theatrical antics of these new lights. And you begin to see some splits occurring, And that's what Protestant churches do, because they can. If a church, think about it, maybe even your own church. If there's disagreement going on over an issue, it's not uncommon in a Protestant church for a group of people, or even one or two people, to just separate and go somewhere else. You have choice. That is an American thing. Choice. So, Congregationalists and Presbyterians split over this issue. And many of the believers that thought you needed to have a deep, emotional, new light religious conversion went to the Baptist side. They went to the Baptist church. And then, and it just kind of, and so on and so on. The ones that went to the Baptist church, some were more radical than others. Well, they created new churches. That's why we have like 50,000 denominations of Protestant churches in America. How many different kinds of Baptists can you name? Oh, like just Baptists, like Southern Baptist, Bible Baptist, Fundamental Baptist, Free Will Baptist, Fundamental Free Will Bible Baptist. Right? There's hundreds of, really literally 50,000 different denominations. So that's one of the things that people can do in America is they have choice. Yes, ma'am. That's the one you told me to.
Just shot out.
You told me. Oh,
Okay.
all right. Thank you. All right. So those schisms. That's what this is called. It's a schism. Give you like a more close to like say all of a sudden, oh, we hate Mr. Moore. We want a new history teacher. He's teaching us stuff that we think is false. And we don't want to hear about this great awakening stuff. We want to hear only Catholic stuff. So we reject it. We're just going to find a new teacher. That would be you would be engaging in schism. You are diverging away from the mainstream, or just any kind of divergency would be schism. And not only that, once you have made your split, you in your new group would assert authority, saying, this is the right way, and the old way is the wrong way. That is what schism is. Okay? So the schisms that set off in the disagreement between the old lights and the new lights, it causes competition. It causes competition. And it greatly increases the competitiveness of American churches. Almost to the point now where like churches are competing over, I guess, church attendees, and they look at that. Does that look like church service? Fireworks, bands, concerts, laser light shows. What is that? That's entertainment. Many churches are competing for you, for your life, for your money, for your soul, and they use entertainment to do that. Okay? Many new Protestant churches, that is. Okay? And it all begins in the 1730s and 20s and 30s. Now, they didn't have laser light shows and stuff like that, but they tried to have the best breakfast or whatever. Like such and such has made biscuits for breakfast. Whatever, okay? Whatever kind of incentivizing they could come up with to increase church attendance. And this is uniquely American. It's uniquely American. America is home to a lot of religions that only exist in America, all right? Many were born here, like the Mormons. The Mormons are a global church now, but that's born right here in the United States, okay? It's a unique American religion. It's a global religion now, as they have missionary work, but that is just one example. Now, the Mormons don't come around until like the 1820s, so we're not there yet. But these schisms are uniquely American. And this increase in competitiveness for people to be members of the church encourages more and more people to want to convert others. And so you see a rise, a fresh wave of missionary work. What is a mission, or a person who acts as a missionary? What is their job? You guys don't know what a missionary is? Yeah, a person who tries to convert others to their way, to their religion. All right? For any religion. All religions have missionaries, really. But each denomination was sending out missionaries. And there's a large portion of the population that's already like in the backwoods country who's just ripe for the picking when it comes to being converted. Native Americans. And so you see a fresh wave of missionary work among Native American population and even among black slaves in the South. So if a lot of this new missionary work, particularly in New England, led to a founding of New Light Centers. We'll call them New Light Centers of higher learning. Places where men could go and learn these emotional styles of preaching. How to be a New Light minister. And you see these educational institutions cropping up all over New England. Princeton, you ever heard of it? Not Princeton, not down the road here, Princeton, but Princeton University. Ever heard of it? It's in New Jersey. Brown, ever heard of it? It's in Rhode Island. Dartmouth, ever heard of it? It's in New Hampshire. Rutgers, you ever heard of it? It's in New Jersey. And with the exception of Rutgers, all of these are what we refer to as the Ivy League. Okay? Those are your Ivy League schools. Harvard was already around. Harvard already existed. Okay? And these new educational places pop up and are created by New Light ministers, by New Light leadership, and bring forth the new teachings and the new way of preaching from the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening is directly related to their formation. All right? Okay. Thought I had a slide about that. I don't. Well, I'll just keep talking to you about it. That's not what we're doing next. That was an accident. So, we'll keep that picture up. All right. So, education. Education. I'm sorry I don't have any slides for this. I will fix that. But education was, historically reserved for who? Men? Rich men? White men? Rich white men from aristocratic families. And it was a blessing to receive an education. Not for the unwashed, dirty peasants who are doing all the farm labor. What percentage of America was farmers? 90. Okay? It was kind of believed and handed down from generation to generation from our European ancestry, many colonists' European ancestry, that education should be for leadership. It should only be for the people who are in charge, not as a part of citizenship. Now, we kind of take that for granted. We, here, 2021 Americans, we take education for granted because it's something that you have had access to and has been really forced upon you since you were 4 and 5 years old. That has not always been the case, all right? Now you kind of like look at education as something, I don't want to go to school. Oh, I'm scared of learning stuff and being smart. This was at a time in which if you were not wealthy and elite, you didn't get education. It was deprived from you. So it was a blessing to have it. All right? So education, because it was thought should only be for leadership, not for citizenship. But in America today, it's required amongst our citizens. You have to go to school. What happens if you don't go to school? Let's just say you take 2 months off. Hey, I'm not going to school anymore. You're not old. What are you guys, 15? Not going. What happens? Mom and dad could face legal consequences because it's the law. You must go to school. So it was not the case here. It was primarily reserved for rich white males. And it was a very slow and kind of painful progression to break the chains of those restrictions, to break that way of thinking. Puritan New England, largely for religious reasons, was more zealously interested in education than any other section of colonies. And that's why you see a lot more schools there. The oldest schools in America are in New England. All those schools I just mentioned. Now, New England was dominated by the Congregationalist church, the Puritan church. And the Puritan church, they believe in Martin Luther's idea of sola scriptura. What does that mean? Sola scriptura.
Solely based on the Bible.
That's right. Everything is based upon Holy Scripture, the Bible. You take your cues from the Bible. You need an answer to a question, you go to the Bible. Their entire doctrine is based upon Bible. Okay? Well, in order to get the information, you have to be able to have what ability? Literacy. You must be able to read. Okay? Whereas in the past, when I mean in the past, the first 1,500 years of Christianity, it was not sola scriptura. It was the church, the Catholic Church. And you took your cues from the priest at Mass. The priest could read, the priest would interpret it for you, and you really didn't need to read the Bible. Plus, in the first 1,500 years of the church, there was no printing press. There was like 12 books on earth. I mean, probably more than that, but books were rare. You didn't just have one. The Gideons weren't going around passing them out to everybody. That didn't exist. If you had a Bible, that was like owning 5 cars. That would be like the equivalent in its worth. One book. So it was much a different world in terms of access, and we'll pick up with that tomorrow. And hopefully we'll have some sound on our video today.